Let's discuss why lining a bag is important. It hides the seams, it makes the bag more attractive, it's a perfect place to stitch on all of those pockets, and it's a great excuse for using more pretty fabric. But not all bags need linings. If you don't want to line your bag, you can finish the seams in one of two ways. You can bind the edges like this, or you can simply zigzag stitch the seams. Before we jump into the techniques themselves, it's really worth checking out the construction order of making your bag in your class materials. So let's get lining. So let's start with the drop-in lining. Why would you use the drop-in lining method? Well, if you've made a bag that's quite rigid, like say a clutch, and it's quite hard and stiff, the last thing you want to do when turning your bags right side out is to scrunch up your crunchy bag. The great thing about the drop-in lining method is that it's the method that provides the least disturbance to your outside bag. So what I have an exterior bag which is right side out, and I've folded the top edge down to the wrong side by 1 centimetre, and I've ironed a nice sharp crease. And for my lining bag, which is the same dimensions of my exterior bag, I've done the same. The lining bag is the wrong side out and the top edge is folded down to the wrong side, again by 1 centimetre. So to line the exterior bag, it's a simple case of inserting my lining into the exterior bag so that both bags are touching each other wrong sides. And at this point, I really need to consider how I'm going to attach bag handles to the bag. And you can do one of two things. You can attach your bag handle to the side seam or to the front and back by attaching it to the exterior. Or you can do what I'm going to do, which is to take the bag handle and insert it in between the lining and the exterior layers. Again, you could put the front or the back or the side seam, it's up to you. But for this little tote, I want to put my handles on the front and back. Firstly, I'm going to ensure that the side seams of both bags match. I'm going to clip those together so they don't escape. Now they're in place, I can turn my attentions to the bag handles. So I put the bag handle in at least 1 centimetre because that's how wide the lips are on both the exterior and the lining, and I'm just going to clip it in place. Of course at home you would have measured exactly where you're going to place the handle ends, but I'm just going to do it quickly here in the studio. After I've clipped my handles in, I'm going to continue clipping all around the top edge of the bag. And then I'm going to take the bag to the sewing machine and stitch all around the top edge with a 2mm seam. And just like that, we have a great lined bag. Let's take a look at the turn lining next. So let's talk about why you choose the turned linings method. Well, it's easy, it looks really, really neat. There's also plenty of room for error, and when I say room for error, sometimes in bag making it's super layer-tastic, and when you fit the lining and the exterior together, turned linings gives you lots of room to jiggle and get things fitting nicely, and it's also my favourite method. So for my turned lining, I've made the lining bag and the exterior bag. We need to pay attention to how you stitch your lining together. You stitch the lining at the side and the bottom edges, but it's really, really important to leave a gap. I like to leave the gap in my bottom edge of the bag, simply because it's not going to show, but there are times where you might need to leave the gap in the side edge. For my exterior bag, I've already stitched the handles onto the right side, and my handle edges are facing away from the bottom edge of the bag. You could of course put your bag handles on the side seams if you want to, and my exterior bag is right side out. So to line the exterior bag, what I do is I insert the exterior bag right side out into my lining, which is wrong side out, so that when inserted, the two bags are right sides together. And I'm going to carefully match the side seams and clip them together. You might find the handles kind of get in away in the bit at the top edge, but just kind of push them down a bit so that they don't interfere with the top edge of the two bags. It's also worth making sure that your handles are pointing perfectly upwards, because if they move a little and the handle is wonky, then you're going to stitch it in wonky as well. And now we're ready to take it to the machine. So I'll be stitching all around the top edge only, and you'll be stitching with your preferred seam allowance. And for me, that's always at least 1/2 centimetre. Yep, make sure that those handles feel completely straight underneath the layers. Okay. Now the two bags have stitched together, it's a case of turning the bag right side out, and I'm going to do that by putting my hands through the gap in the bottom edge and pulling out the exterior bag. And I always love doing this. No matter how many times I do it, it kind of feels like, well, a bag giving birth to a bag. So now both the exterior and the lining are right side out, and this is the point where you're going to stitch the gap in the lining shut, and you do that by pushing in the seams of the gap and taking the lining back to the machine. Of course, if you wanted to, you could always pin or clip the gap shut. I've done this so many times, I'm just happy to hold it in place with my fingers. And you're going to stitch the gap shut really close to the edge. No more than 2 millimeters should do the trick. And because you can't always see when you're stitching the gap shut, it's quite a good idea to maybe place your thumbnail just beyond where the gap closes. So that's you know where you're going to stop your stitching. And all you need to do then is to pop the lining into the exterior bag. The handles are magically attached in between the lining and the exterior. At home, you'll more than likely iron the top edge to get a nice sharp crease at the top edge. And you'll probably want to top stitch it as well. I mean, even though that's not necessary, I find that that looks really nice. So maybe a top stitch about 2 millimeters away from the top edge. And there you go, a beautifully lined bag.